The book begins with a Brooks telling the story of someone melting down on a plane because he felt like all his work had been for nothing. Having been at the top of his game in his latter years, he knew he no longer measured up to that standard and judged his past accomplishments by his present ability. This is a warning. Brooks followed this with a chapter demonstrating that most people hit their decline much sooner than they recognize professionally. The bad news is that the decline comes sooner than we would expect. The good news is that it is a particular type of decline. In general, younger people tend to be more adaptable and experience a higher degree of fluid intelligence. This is why software upgrades becomes frustrating changes at some point in life. On the other hand, there are new intelligence that open up. People tend to become wiser, having mastered more things, perhaps, and they also tend to become more articulate. Some professions, especially humanities, tend to gain in acumen as time goes on, largely because of the volume of background knowledge that must be obtained. So the bad news is tempered by some good news, as long as we are prepared to accept it and adjust ourselves to its reality. Book argues that to age gracefully, we must adapt our expectations. It simply is not feasible for a 50-year-old to expect the same result with the same effort as someone in their mid 20s. In fact, we are likely to work ourselves to that as we try to win those things out. That's why burnout around middle age is so common. Rather than crash and burn, we should attempt to adjust our expectations gradually. We should remember that we are going to die and live with both the anticipation of what that means and the realization of the limitation that brings. As a result, we should focus more on deep relationships, our spiritual journey, be honest about our changing expectation with those around, and ultimately look for new opportunities that can best use our changing abilities. This is a good read for people who are in their 40s, 50s, a nudge on realization about life, about moving from fluid intelligence to crystallized intelligence, about jumping on the second curve, just about at the decline of first curve of life are some of the takeaways. In 2012, Brooks overheard a very famous man on a plane talking to his wife. The man complained that he no longer felt needed and he felt it would be better if he were dead. He was still revered by people, but his exploits were in the distant past. Brooks was intrigued about what research said about people who accomplish much early in life and what happened as they age. What he learned was that people in nearly every profession experience a decline starting in the middle age, which he discussed in chapter 1. The second chapter introduces what Brooks called the second curve. If productivity and creativity, what one research has called fluid intelligence, show a decline with age, the second curve represents crystallized intelligence. This is the ability to use the inventory of knowledge and wisdom built up earlier in life. The graph of this over time shows an increase or upward curve well into the last years of life. Brooks argues that one needs to jump to this second curve as one ages. The rest of the book focuses on how to do that. Chapter 3 to 5 examines the reason why people resist moving to the second curve. The first reason discussed in the third chapter is addiction to work and the never ending striving for success. The next chapter explains how attachment to worldly possessions and rewards prevents this shift as people become accustomed to accumulating ever increasing quantities of things. Brooks recommend paring down such possession to only the essentials. Chapter 5 looks at how the fear of declines keeps people on the striver's track, pushing themselves harder and harder to maintain their peak level despite impossible odds. Brooks' advice is for people to ponder their death, even envision it as a way to break its grip and free themselves to act without fear. Next, Brooks suggests ways people can prepare themselves for the leap to the second curve. In chapter 6, he discussed the importance of cultivating and maintaining close personal relationships as well as why this can be so difficult for overachievers and leaders. Chapter 7 examines the need for spirituality that often accompanies middle age and the ways people can embrace that even when it does not come naturally. Chapter 8 looks at how one to drop one defensiveness about weakness and turn them into strength. Being open about one's weakness and show vulnerability often leads to unexpectedly deep connection with others and even a new, more rewarding path. In the last chapter, Brooke delves into making the leap to the second curve, why transitions are challenging, and how to overcome them. In fact, transitions can be opportunities as much as crises. The author reminds people that love is the key to happiness, but only love for people, not things. One of my favorite annual Christmas season rituals is watching the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's a 1946 classic that tells a compelling story about making a difference in the lives of others. In the movie, Jimmy's character became a reluctant leader in his small hometown of Bedford Falls. Engulfed in a personal financial crisis by the evil business tycoon, Mr. Potter, George prepares to jump off a bridge so his family can collect on his life insurance policy. Then, Clarence, George's guardian angel, drops in. Clarence shows George what life would have been like in Bedford Falls without him. If George got his wish and he had never been born, the town and the many lives George touched so positively are much poorer because George was never there. In true movie fashion, George joyfully returns to his real life and grateful friends and family resolve the financial crisis. It's a Wonderful Life raises important question. What voids have I filled? Whose life have I touched? Who have I yet to touch? What bad things would have happened if I were not here? What would I want the key players in my life to say my life stood or the difference I made? Who would those key players be? What have our lives made visible to others? What without us would not have been seen? These are the sorts of vital questions Arthur Brooks addressed in this book. What do you think when you hear the name Charles Darwin? Successful scientist or complete failure? Of course, most people would consider Darwin's career to be a massive success. At 22, he boarded a royal ship and embarked on a new famous scientific expedition, spending 5 years scouring the globe to collect the exotic plant and animal samples that would earn him an esteemed spot in history. At 27, he developed the theory of natural selection, which proposes that organisms best adapted to their environment are most likely to thrive through survival of the fittest. At 50, he published On the Origin of Species, his best-selling book that changed science forever. Today, Darwin is a household name. His theory of natural selection is taught in countless classrooms around the world. His writings has been read by billions. He is hailed as the father of evolution and is buried in Westminster Abbey as a national hero. To say he made an impact on humankind would be an understatement. And yet, Darwin considering himself a failure. Why? Like successful professionals, Darwin could not bear to see his career decline as he approached old age. Publishing on the origin of species at 50 was the peak of his career, and from there he had no place to go but down. From 50 to 73, Darwin found himself stuck in a period of creative stagnation. No more scientific breakthroughs, no more industry defining books, and for that Darwin, that meant no more purpose. I have not the heart or strength at my age to begin any investigations lasting years, which is the only thing which I enjoy, he said to a friend. I have everything to make me happy and contented, but life has become very wearisome to me. Fame and fortune meant nothing to Darwin in his last years or later years. What he wanted was to achieve new scientific progress and success, and eventually doing so was simply beyond his abilities. Charles Darwin was a brilliant scientist, but whether you have followed in his footsteps or taken a different path entirely, you and the father of evolution have a lot in common. You see, Darwin's professional decline was completely normal and predictable. Whether dancer, doctor, painter, or pilot, one thing is sure, one day you will face a similar decline in your career. The prefrontal cortex is to blame for the pesky phenomena. It is that part of brain responsible for working memory, executive function, and the ability to focus. A strong prefrontal cortex enables you to improve upon your specialty, whether that is writing sonnets or performing heart surgery. And it also happens to be the first part of the brain to decline in adulthood. Study after study shows that in almost every high skill profession, decline sets in sometime between one late 30s and early 50s. Aging isn't something to be feared. With the right roadmap, you can make the second half of life even more meaningful than the first, finding lasting fulfillment in the present rather than wistfully living in the past. From Strength to Strength by Dr. Arthur Brooks is an inspiring book about embarrassing change without suffering and finding your calling in life and happiness, even if your abilities fade and your career declines. The more control you have over life, the more responsible you feel for your own success or failure. This book helps readers stop dwelling on past successes and find fulfillment in the present. While decline is inevitable, it does not have to be the end. If you know how to, you can live out the second half of your life while still feeling useful and satisfied. Happiness actually predicts success. Success does not predict happiness. Take your happiness more seriously than anything else. By refocusing on certain priorities and habits that anyone can learn, such as deep wisdom, detachment from empty rewards, connection and service to others, and spiritual progress, we can set ourselves up for increased happiness. Happiness is not just up to chance. To begin with, it's not just a feeling. The feeling of happiness is like the smell of the turkey at your Thanksgiving dinner. It's not the dinner itself. Happiness is a set of elements. It's made up of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. And we can control all those things. Not perfectly, but a lot more than we typically think. The truth is that happiness does not have to be left up to chance. And we can get happier as we get older. Each of us can be happier at 75 than we were at 25 age. The striver's curse. After about age 70, there are two groups of people in the population. One group gets happier and happier as they age, and the other group gets less and less happy. It's about 50-50 if you look at the data. Now, most people think that to be on the upper branch, to get happier as you get older, you have to be one of the successful people. The people who do a lot with their lives, who see a lot of worldly success. Because then you can dine out on your success and be happy. Well, it's not true. The striver's curse is that the people on the lower branch, the people who tend to get unhappier as they age, tend to be the one who experience a lot more success earlier in their lives. And it kind of makes sense. What goes up must come down. If you don't do anything with your life, you won't know when it's over. But if you do a lot with your life and the party ends, you are going to notice the difference. That contrast is really hard to take. Our natural strengths change and we need to get from one success curve to the second. Early in life, we have a lot of what psychologists call fluid intelligence that increases through your 20s and 30s. It increases faster if you work harder on it, but it decreases in your 40s and 50s. Fluid intelligence is your ability to work hard with focus and solve problems. Your analytical capacity, what makes you a superstar, the hot lawyer, the good sergeant. Maybe the incredibly inventive and intelligent electrician. In almost every job, fluid intelligence early on in your life makes you good at what you do. But it decreases as you age. However, there is another kind of intelligence that you get later in life called crystallized intelligence that increases through your 40s and 50s. It stays high through your 60s and 70s and even beyond. Crystallized intelligence is not all about working hard and focusing. It's about wisdom and passing on knowledge. You get wiser as you get older, which means you know a lot and you know how to use the information. It also means you are a much better teacher. The best teachers are older people. So early on, you have fluid intelligence, and later on, you have crystallized intelligence. The trick is to go from fluid to crystallize, to go from innovator to instructor. Don't add without subtracting. One of the things that all happy older people have in common is that they don't just know how to add things to their lives, they also know how to subtract things from their lives. Early on, life is like a canvas that you are filling up with paint, creativity, with energy, with enthusiasm, more brush strokes, more paint. And it's all up to you. What you paint is limited only by your imagination. But after a certain point, that canvas gets pretty full. So, to be happy, you need to change the metaphor from a canvas you are filling up to a block of marble that you are chipping away. In the second half of your life, you need to become a sculptor and chip away the things that you aren't you, the possessions, the attachments, the beliefs, even the opinions, all the stuff that distracts you from the serious business of being you. To be happy as you get older, remember, don't just add, subtract. Don't just have a bucket list, have a reverse bucket list for every year on your birthday. When you look at the 5 or 10 things you want to get rid of because they are holding you back. Happiness is based on love. One of the most interesting things in the neuroscience and social science of happiness is that happiness is based on love. Love is the nuclear fuel of happiness. And if you don't have a lot of love in your life, you can't get happier as you get older. And that means you need to work on the love in your life. You need to cultivate your relationships, whether they are your friendship, family relation, or marriage. You have got to see them get better as you get older so that you can get happier as you get older. Here is something to think about. The aspen tree is a stately masterpiece. It looks like it's all alone, isolated yet majestic, and you can take shade under it. It's a beautiful tree. But the truth of the matter is that an aspen tree is not a good metaphor for the soul striver, the successful person at all. See, the aspen tree is actually not one plant, an entire grove of aspen trees in one plant. They have the same root system. In fact, the largest organism in the world is a stand of aspen trees in Utah called Pando. That's 106 acres large, containing 6 million kilograms of wood. That's one planet. And that's you too. You are not a solitary aspen tree. You are part of a vast root system. And if you want to get happier as you get older, you need to cultivate your root systems. Not just look out for your leaves and your individual tree. Maybe you are a striver and successful, but you are kind of lonely in your relationships. Well, successful people usually have a lot of people around them. They have a lot of deal friends. How many real friends do you have? Go from deal to real and watch yourself get happier.